Now, Saudi Arabia once welcomed millions of foreign workers to fill jobs in an economy fueled by petrodollars. But a new agenda of labour reform has changed all that. Hundreds of thousands of migrant workers are now being deported. A large percentage of them are Yemenis. For more on this, Afrah Nasser joins us from New York. She's a Yemeni blogger and freelance journalist focusing on human rights issues. Good to have you with us. This must be having an enormous impact on Yemen if all those workers who were sending money home to their families in Yemen now can no longer do so.
Absolutely. If you truly understand that Yemen is the world's worst humanitarian crisis, this is absolutely a disastrous policy to send back thousands and maybe millions of guest Yemeni workers in Saudi Arabia, especially that Saudi Arabia is involved in the decisive store military operation in Yemen. So, and this is not something new that Yemeni have seen. They have seen that in the 1990, following the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait, when Saudi Arabia had when Yemen had a political stance toward supporting the invasion, and then Saudi Arabia getting upset with that political stance, and it sent back about 1 million guest Yemeni workers in Saudi Arabia, and that contributed actually to why Yemen has always been for decades one of the poorest countries in the world. So today, if you look at the collapse of Yemen economy and the more than 1 million Yemeni civil servants who have not been paid their salaries for almost 2 years, and then to send back another thousands of Yemeni workers who most of their families in Yemen dependent on the fluidity that they poured into the country. This is absolutely going to have a disastrous impact in the economic situation.
So, Afrah, can I ask you, because I saw that a few weeks ago the Houthis were saying they welcomed back these migrant workers from Saudi Arabia because they could then join the conflict and join the battle against the Saudi-backed government. Do you think that that's what might happen with some of these Yemeni workers who are being forced to return to Yemen?
Look, two things. The Houthis would love to have any kind of similar news to really feed into their media propaganda, and also to have more sources into the conflict. But the problem or the issue is that not when the Yemenis themselves want to join the Houthis, but it's how these armed fights have become another source of income for thousands of young men in Yemen. When I call my family back home in Yemen, in every call I hear of one of a teenager in our family or friends of friends who have joined these military groups, because that has become a source of income when you don't have any jobs, when all companies are shutting down, when the country is under a siege, when entries for commercial commodities, when people cannot do any kind of commerce work or business. These fights and these military groups have turned into a source of income. As a young Yemeni a teenager or a kid or a young man, today, if you don't fight and get money out of your military work with the Houthis or other terrorist organizations, there is no other way for you to get an income. So understandably, this is going to be not only part of the Houthis' policy in getting advantage of the Saudi policy, but it's something that the grassroots or an organic attitude from the Yemeni would surface, given the current circumstances and given how the economy. There is no other way than to get money in the country today, other than to raise your arm.